When 100 eyes were on him, the billionaire's question uncovered a surprising truth: one mom resilience. James stood at the entrance of the elegant venue, glass doors framing an opulent interior that felt worlds apart from the oil-stained floors of his auto shop back in Chatham. He shifted from foot to foot, heart racing in conflict. He had only come to support his son Jamie, who had insisted he attend the gala honoring David Sinclair. With every passing moment, the golden chandeliers and perfectly polished marble floors served as a stark reminder of how out of place he truly felt. The din of laughter and clinking glasses surrounded him like an unwelcome fog, gnawing at his already fraying nerves. His mind wandered back to his mother, a woman of grit and lifeblood who had pushed herself to the breaking point to provide for her family. Was it for nights like this? He could almost hear her voice echo in his mind, reminding him to stand tall, to remember where he came from. Yet standing there, in front of 1,000 symmetries he could never own, he felt small. The gap between his world and theirs tightened like a coil of steel, choking him with a sense of inadequacy. What did he have to offer in this sea of wealth? As the evening wore on, Sinclair strolled to a raised platform, effortlessly commanding the attention of the crowd. James swallowed hard, the question hanging in the air like a storm cloud. What legacy do we leave for our children? The word struck him like a lightning bolt. Silence wrapped around him, all eyes were on the man in black tie, but James felt the question pulsing through him, a question that demanded introspection. Fear clawed at him. Did he dare step forward, revealing the sacrifices of a woman long gone? The room felt stifling, laughter from the guests blending into a mocking choir. Each laugh was a reminder of his place in the world, an invisible wall separating the polished from the distressed. Yet, in the shadow of that question, an undeniable energy ignited within him. His mother's story deserved to be told, if only to honor her legacy. Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. James stood at the intersection of truth and vulnerability, the crowd now a sea of faces, but only one shot through him with urgency. Just as he found his voice, a stillness settled like thick fog, and an elder stood skeptical, eyes locked onto Sinclair. Your company, Mr. Sinclair, and the struggles of James's mother, their history here. Injustice that she fought against. James's insides twisted as he grappled with conflicting emotions, a surge of betrayal coursed through him. What history did Sinclair hold? How had he not known? Distress pressed on his chest. His pulse raced, shutting out the sparkle of the evening and shrouding him in darkness. The very essence of who he was being questioned, not just by a room of opulent guests but also within the confines of his heart. Could he expose the truth? Discover buried secrets that might unravel everything he believed about his mother's fight? Anxiety clawed through him, demanding he navigate the treacherous waters of confronting Sinclair and defending his mother's dignity. As the night deepened and eyes remained on him, James stood at the brink, grappling with an impending confrontation, one that could redefine legacies and reveal truths that had long been hidden in the dark corners of his family's past. And then, a figure emerged from the shadows. Their identity could upend everything he believed. He felt the weight of the crowd, and with it, the gravitas of the night. Swirled into chaos. James felt a cold sweat forming on his brow as the crowd awaited his next move. The weight of their collective gaze pressed down on him, each eye a weighty coin that could either uplift or shatter him. Who was this elder? What did they know? 1,000 questions spiraled in his mind, but there was no time for hesitation. This was his chance to reclaim the narrative of his mother's legacy and confront the unspoken truths lurking within the shadows of Sinclair's empire. As the elder continued to look expectantly, James summoned the remnants of his courage. He stepped forward, the sound of his shoes echoing against the marble flooring, each step pounding with the rhythm of his heartbeat. Voices around him faded, the din of laughter and clinking glasses had receded into a distant murmur, leaving him cloaked in silence and solitude. "You speak of history, sir," he began, his voice steadier than he felt. "But what history do you know?" Sinclair, taken aback by the sudden turn in the thick atmosphere, turned to James, his expression neutral but eyes alight with interest. There were unspoken dealings, hardships that ripple through families like stones cast into a pond. "I'm aware of your mother's struggles against the forces that nearly crushed her spirit." The mention of his mother's resilience ignited something deep within James. He had spent years clutching to fragments of her story, piecing together a narrative that bore witness to her sacrifice and grit. Every late night at the shop, every calloused hand he bore was evidence of her spirit living on through him. And now, standing amidst these glittering strangers, the challenge was not just Sinclair's acknowledgement but the opportunity to bring her unyielding strength to light. James's mind raced through memories, his mother's tired eyes, her whispers of dreams deferred, the way she fought against circumstances that tried to drown her hope. "My mother didn't just face injustice. She fought back, clawed her way through every lens of difficulty. I'm here to ensure she isn't forgotten, to ensure that her battles mattered," he proclaimed, drawing energy from the resolve that poured into his words. The crowd began to shift, a murmur spreading, what had begun as silent scrutiny turned into curiosity. He could see it now, a glimmer of recognition in some faces, an understanding that perhaps his story echoed theirs too. They weren't just passive spectators anymore, they were witnesses to a truth unfolding. Sinclair, now clearly perturbed, stepped closer. "And what truth is that, James? That your mother had to fight against my company? An entity that many have benefited from? Where is the line between righting a wrong and carrying a grudge?" James felt a surge of anger mixed with clarity. Sinclair was right to challenge him. He had to define not just the narrative of his mother's legacy but also his role in this newfound confrontation. Was he here to point fingers or to set forth a transformation? The stakes heightened, not just for him but for any child who had watched their parent struggle against a system more powerful than love. Stepping further into the fray, he raised his chin, words spilling forth as a decree, not a plea. "It's not a grudge, it's a call for recognition. It's about acknowledging the sacrifices that undermine the polished stories we tell ourselves in the grandeur of wealth. I will not let her struggle be brushed aside as collateral damage." The air grew thick with unspoken words and unacknowledged truths, and that tension ignited the crowd. James realized that he wasn't just fighting for his mother's past, he was carving out a space for his present and future. In this moment's furnace, he felt something new dawn within him, purpose. As he scanned the crowd, their faces revealing a gambit of emotions from awe to introspection, he glimpsed a form familiar to him in the periphery. His son, Jamie, watched with eyes wide open, a mirror of James's own contemplation, grasping the depth of this revelation. But it also struck James, the truth he sought was not just about his mother, nor was it solely against Sinclair. What was the currency of his own legacy to Jamie? Before he could delve deeper into his thoughts, the elder turned sharply, a new resolve in their tone. "If you intend to take on Sinclair, to unveil what lies hidden, you will need more than just righteous anger. You need allies and proof." James felt a thrill of determination surge within him, yet anxiety rippled through him, realizing the complexity of the road ahead. "I will find the truth," he replied, a promise etched in determination. But now he faced an even deeper dilemma. Who could he trust in this journey of discovery? As he stood at the precipice of a confrontation that could rewrite his understanding of family and legacy, a flicker of fear intertwined with excitement ignited in his chest. The night was far from over. He sensed a storm brewing within himself, and the call for discovery awaited. This next step could fracture his world or forge something indelible. Either way, he would have to prepare for whatever truths lay ahead. Would there be hidden allies? Or antagonists cloaked as friends ready to trip him up? The refreshing clarity of uncertainty washed over him as he took a breath, ready to face whatever came next. James stood rooted, amid the swirling emotions that began to settle around him like a thick fog. The elder's words echoed in his mind, "You need allies and proof." The call to action resonated, but James knew the path to uncovering the truth about his mother's legacy would be treacherous. Trust, he mused, was a currency he could ill afford in this web of power and deceit. As he began to scan the crowd for potential allies, a familiar face finally emerged: Evelyn, a journalist he had crossed paths with numerous times over the past few years. She had that knack for digging beneath the surface, keenly perceptive, and driven by a personal mission to expose systemic injustices. At their last encounter, she had expressed admiration for his resilience. Perhaps, he thought, she could help illuminate the shadows he now faced. "James," she greeted, her eyes brimming with a mixture of concern and intrigue. "What just happened back there? You've done something remarkable." He could feel the weight of her gaze push him to delve deeper. "I've realized the stakes are higher than I thought. This isn't just about my mother anymore, it's about truth itself. I need someone who can help me sift through the layers of deception that surround Sinclair." Evelyn's expression hardened subtly, her resolve concertinaed within unspoken memories of her own battles against corruption. "Then you know we need more than just raw emotion. We need a plan." They moved aside, out of earshot, where the murmurs of the crowd faded. As they began to discuss strategies, James found himself not just outlining a vision, he was filled with meticulous purpose. Trails of inquiry blossomed in his mind, potential witnesses, documents long buried under administrative walls, and pretexts Sinclair's empire had crafted to disguise the truth. He would have to be strategic, leveraging every fragment of information. "What do we know already?" Evelyn inquired, her voice a low, firm thread weaving through the air. James took a breath, pulling every thought together like threads on a loom. There were fire codes ignored in the past, testimonies silenced. "I need to reach out to my mother's old contacts. Maybe she confided in someone in her darkest moments. It could lead us to the proof Sinclair is banking on never resurfacing." Evelyn nodded, scribbling notes fervently. This was the essence of their collaboration, his lived experience paired with her tenacity for investigative journalism. "We'll need to be cautious. Sinclair won't take kindly to you poking around. He has resources and influence to choke your efforts." James squared his shoulders, determination firming his stance. "I know that. But I finally see the fight ahead of me. For too long, I've held on to my mother's pain without channeling it. If he thinks he can bury her story, he will have to face me head-on." There was an intensity behind his words, gathering the attention of those within earshot. Loyalties could pivot at any moment in these high-stakes conversations, and he sensed eyes shifting toward them, some skeptical, others intrigued. Perhaps there were allies among the crowd, maybe even those who shared in the seeds of dissent against Sinclair's control. As James and Evelyn began to refine their plan, weaving in tasks and setting timelines, he felt an awakening inside him, an empowerment he hadn't recognized before. This wasn't merely about reclaiming a legacy, it was about establishing his identity beyond the shadow of his mother's struggles. When they finished, Evelyn clasped his arm, a symbol of their newfound alliance. "We start tomorrow. But heed this, the truth will not be easily disentangled. There will be moments where you'll question everything, your motives, your allies. Then I will face those questions head-on," James replied, his voice stable. "I haven't come this far to shy away from the truth." As they parted ways, unease formed a tight ball in his stomach, yet exhilaration bridged every crevice of doubt. He couldn't ignore the nagging thought that, as he pursued justice, he might inadvertently resurrect hidden truths about their past, truths he wasn't yet ready to confront. Yet, he must press onward. The stakes were clearer now, the stakes weren't solely his to navigate. The specter of Sinclair loomed, but alongside him now, he carried the hopes of his mother and his son. With renewed clarity, he turned his gaze back to the gathering, flickering lights reflecting a society oblivious to the tensions simmering beneath the surface. Would he carve a path among those who shared his vision or find more stones on his road? The night extended its hand, beckoning James to step deeper into his new reality. Tomorrow would bring deeper challenges. The fight is just beginning, he murmured to himself as he stepped out into the cool night air. And with every breath, he braced for the revelations that awaited him. Little did he know, the first piece of evidence would arrive much sooner than anticipated, dropped right into his hands by an unexpected ally. Dawn broke with a muted glow, the streets swept in shards of light as James prepared for the day ahead. The sense of urgency drove him to shake off the remnants of sleep, fueling a growing fire within. He had spent a sleepless night crafting the contours of a plan, each detail etched into his mind like a blueprint. Yet, anticipation fluttered in his chest, tangled with the fear of failure. He stepped into the day with purpose, the chill of morning air stinging his cheeks but invigorating his resolve. The map he'd drawn highlighted locations where his mother once sought refuge, places that harbored echoes of the truths he now sought. He knew he would have to conduct these searches meticulously. Each conversation could either push him closer to the revelation or plunge him into the abyss of deceit. As James made his way to a small cafe where he agreed to meet Evelyn, he couldn't help but ruminate over their last exchange. Though their collaboration felt promising, the responsibility weighed heavy on him. What if he failed not only himself but also her trust? Such thoughts gnawed at the edges of his motivation, not because he lacked confidence in their shared mission but because the stakes were climbing higher with each step. Each passing moment felt like a countdown, urging him to be more than just an observer in this escalating narrative. He found Evelyn already seated when he arrived, scanning documents and taking notes. As their eyes met, a sense of camaraderie surged, lifting the tide of anxiety that had threatened to plunge him under. "Ready to make some noise?" she asked, a cautious smile crossing her lips. "More than ready," he replied, internalizing the commitment to do more than merely react. This was the opportunity for him to reclaim agency, to reconstruct his narrative rather than allow it to be dictated by another. Evelyn folded her papers, her expression shifting from casual to intense. "So, where to first? Your mother's contacts?" James hesitated, grappling with the mixture of emotions flooding his system. "Yes, I think we should start with Mrs. Wilkins. She was one of my mother's closest friends and might hold the key." Their next stop was an unassuming neighborhood on the outskirts of town, a place that resonated with hushed conversations and weathered street corners. As they walked, James soaked in Evelyn's quiet persistence. Her presence unveiled a hidden strength within him. For the first time, he recognized that he could transcend the whispers of doubt that had long lingered in the shadows of his identity. Mrs. Wilkins' small house had an air of familiarity, layers of dust and the scent of aged wood welcoming them. He knocked, and the door creaked open slowly. Time seemed to freeze as he was greeted by the elderly woman's weary smile, a lighthouse amid the stormy sea of uncertainty. "James, dear, it's been so long," she exclaimed, enveloping him in a fragile embrace as memories crashed over him, fragments of laughter and warmth confined to the echoes of his childhood. "Mrs. Wilkins, I need your help," he stated, steeling himself against the inevitable pain his inquiry would evoke. "I'm trying to understand my mother's legacy better. Sinclair is hiding something significant, and I believe you might know some details." Her face fell, the warmth replaced with shadowed grief. "Your mother fought hard, James, but sometimes the truth is something we bury deep to protect ourselves. You must be careful." The warning echoed in his mind, but he could not retreat now. "What did she say? Were there threats?" He pressed, desperate for liberation from the chains of ignorance that bound him. Mrs. Wilkins hesitated, her eyes flickering with the weight of decisions made long ago. There were whispers of a deal gone wrong. Not everything was as it seemed. Sinclair, he manipulates people without a trace of remorse. As the conversation unfolded, each word revealed not only a clue about Sinclair's malice but also a revelation about his own capacity to face the truth. She spoke of courage, resilience, and most importantly, of standing for what was right even when it was terrifying. Evelyn's fingers grasped James' arm softly, reminding him that he was not alone in this pursuit. He felt the convergence of experience and newfound strength. The day before, he had merely reacted; today, he was taking ownership, asserting himself in the fight for justice. Once Mrs. Wilkins divulged the name of someone who might have additional knowledge, James's mind whirred with possibilities. Each piece of information was a link to forging a larger coalition against Sinclair's oppressive regime. As they left, a sense of conviction flooded him, any lingering doubt dissipating in the wake of a clear purpose. Yet, the memory of Mrs. Wilkins' pained expression loomed large, a reminder of the painful truths still shrouded in darkness. As they moved through the streets, an unsettling sense of being watched crept over James, tightening around him. Creeping suspicion began eating away at his newly found determination. Who else had noticed his movements? Was Sinclair already aware of his inquiries? With his heart pounding in his chest, he turned to Evelyn. "The deeper we dig, the more dangerous this becomes, doesn't it?" She met his gaze, the resolve in her eyes unwavering. "Yes, but it's a risk worth taking. Just remember, knowledge is your first line of defense." Their steps quickened, urgency propelling them to the next phase of their quest. As he prepared to confront the reality of this looming battle, James knew the road ahead would be fraught with peril. But every step held the promise of discovery, and he was no longer simply an errand boy in this unfolding drama. Little did he know, a singular misstep would transform their mission into a high-stakes game where the rules were rewritten with every move. Would James uncover the looming truths before they swallowed him whole? The air became thick with tension as they entered a narrow alleyway lined with warehouses, their shadows cloaked in the midday sun. James could feel the weight of Evelyn's hand on his shoulder, grounding him while his mind raced with the information they had just acquired. The name Mrs. Wilkins had provided wasn't just a breadcrumb, it felt like a beacon guiding him through a fog of uncertainty. Yet, every step echoed with the unease of having Sinclair's watchful eye on their trail. Evelyn's determination matched his own, and yet, he sensed an undercurrent of apprehension in her demeanor. "Where do we go from here?" she asked, her voice steady but with an edge of urgency. "We need to find Thomas Lewis," James replied, his voice firm. "If anyone can uncover more about Sinclair's hold on my mother, it's him." Thomas, once a partner of Sinclair, had distanced himself from the shadows of their shared past, but James believed guilt gnawed at his conscience. As they approached Thomas's old office building, a sense of dissonance gripped James. Memories of how Sinclair once manipulated their company flooded his mind. Would Thomas, too, have remnants of that loyalty or fear? James gathered the momentum behind him, channeling the ache of his past into action. He recalled Mrs. Wilkins' fortitude and reminded himself that standing was all about confronting fear, not succumbing to it. The building loomed before them, a stark reminder of corporate corruption and the lives intertwined within. They ventured inside, the stale air thickening with the scent of aged wood and something unshakable, a history laden with treachery. James knocked on Thomas's office door, the echo sealing his fate. A voice, raspy and weighted with years of silence, beckoned them to enter. As the door creaked open, James found himself staring at a man steeped in shadows, the lines etched across his face telling stories of compromises and deceit. "James," Thomas murmured, surprise flashing across his features. "What brings you back here?" "This isn't a social call," James responded, steeling himself for the confrontation. "I know you have information concerning Sinclair's dealings and my mother." The air shifted, palpable and electric. Thomas's expression hardened. "Some things are better left buried, James. You don't understand the dangers at play." "Danger." The word echoed in James's head, reverberating through his newfound courage. "I understand far more than you think. My mother's legacy is at stake, yours too if you choose to remain silent." Thomas hesitated, searching for a way out, yet James knew this moment was pivotal. He needed to break through the layers of secrecy. "I'm not asking for protection, I'm demanding the truth." The weight of his voice surprised him, but he felt empowered, each syllable carrying the weight of his discoveries and newfound agency. "You don't know what you're inviting," Thomas muttered, wrestling with his own guilt. "Sinclair's network is deeper and darker than you can imagine." "What have you seen?" James pressed, leaning forward. "What truths are you hiding?" The older man sighed, visibly torn. "There was a transaction. An illegal deal that involved multiple parties. Your mother wanted to pull away, but Sinclair he has a way of forcing compliance. The last thing she feared was losing you." James recoiled slightly, the words crashing through defenses he thought had solidified over the years. The mix of protective instinct and heartbreak surged within him, the need to take action overriding everything else. "As hard as it is to hear, you must decide where you stand, Thomas. You can help hold Sinclair accountable or continue to let fear control you." After a moment of agonizing silence, Thomas finally exhaled, the weight of secrecy cracking beneath the pressure. "There's something more, something I need to show you, but we have to move quickly. Sinclair's aware of you. The risk is escalating." James felt a surge of urgency wash over him. This wasn't just a quest for truth anymore. This was a battle he needed to fight with every ounce of willpower. As they made their way through the office, a sudden sound of footsteps echoed in the distance, a warning shot in the shadowy corridors. They needed to leave, and fast. Before they reached the exit, James's resolve hardened. The truth he sought was becoming as murky as the dangers looming around them. Facing the potential confrontation with Sinclair now felt inevitable. As they fled into the streets, anxiety coursed through him, not just for his safety, but for the imperative of standing firm against the chaos that lay ahead. "What's our next move?" Evelyn asked, her voice breaking through his thoughts. Taking a deep breath, James hardened his resolve. "We get to the heart of this. If Sinclair thinks he can intimidate us, he is sorely mistaken. It's time we turn the tables." With time slipping away, James knew it was no longer about uncovering secrets, it was about tilting the scale toward justice. But first, they would have to confront the shadows of their past and the murky truths that lingered just outside their grasp. As they raced down the street, determination ignited inside him. The stakes were rising, and with every fleeting second, James felt the unmistakable weight of fate resting squarely on his shoulders. What would he uncover when confronted by the wrath of Sinclair? Would his newfound strength be enough to alter the course of history? The adrenaline rushed through James as they navigated the crowded streets, the cacophony of city life offering a surreal contrast to the turmoil brewing within him. The sound of hurried footsteps faded behind them, but the specter of Sinclair lingered, a constant reminder that time was not on their side. Evelyn walked beside him, her expression a mixture of determination and a hint of fear that mirrored in his own chest. Each time he met her gaze, he reminded himself that they were intertwined in this struggle, a partnership forged under duress yet strengthened by purpose. She had found courage in him, and now, their roles were merging, their individual struggles blending into a shared fight. "We head to my apartment," he decided, feeling the need to regroup. "We can plan our next steps away from prying eyes." As they slipped into the relative seclusion of his dimly lit living room, James leaned against the edge of his desk, taking a moment to gather his thoughts. The cluttered space, filled with remnants of his life and career, felt stifling. It was a historic breeding ground of ambition, yet now it served as a stark reminder of what he had lost. "Okay, let's break it down," Evelyn urged, her brows furrowing in concentration. "We know Sinclair has something on your mother, and Thomas hinted at a substantial transaction. What else haven't we uncovered?" James pondered, his mind racing through the labyrinth of doubts and fears. "If Thomas is right, there's more at stake than just my mother's safety. Sinclair's operations must have a wider reach. What if other families are involved? How many lives have been upended because of him?" "Exactly," Evelyn acknowledged. "This is bigger than we thought." You were right to press Thomas for answers. But pressing him has consequences, James interjected, a tinge of worry creeping into his voice. Sinclair's awareness of us plays into our every move. We need to be strategic, not just bold. He could feel the weight of his decisions bearing down, a suffocating force that threatened to crush the confidence he had so eagerly embraced. What if he miscalculated? What if their actions set off a chain reaction that spiraled beyond control? Yet surrender wasn't an option. The urgency to protect his mother outweighed his fears, mingled with the lingering shadows of his past. We'll need leverage, he proposed, his mind turning over possibilities. What if we gather evidence? Something that proves Sinclair's illicit activities? Evelyn nodded, energized by the idea. We could split up. I can tap into some contacts who have had dealings with Sinclair. You can dig through any documents or records on the company's previous dealings. James hesitated. And if Sinclair catches wind of our investigation? We'll be in over our heads. And if we don't act, the stakes grow higher every moment, she challenged, her voice steady. Playing it safe isn't going to save your mother. Her unwavering conviction reignited a spark within him, one born from the realization that despite the dangers, he possessed an inherent capability for fighting back. He had come too far to let fear dictate his fate. You're right, he relented slowly, the clarity sharpening in his mind. We do what it takes. The sensation surged through him, familiar yet empowering. It was a reminder of resilience he had long forgotten, reminiscent of every challenge he faced. James began scribbling down names, potential contacts, and strategies that ignited his imagination with the scent of rebellion. As they formulated their plan, James felt a distinct shift within himself, a recalibration of purpose beyond the desire for closure. He recognized not just a fight for his mother, but a personal crusade against the darkness that had plagued him. Sinclair had left its mark, but James now wore it as armor. The moment felt electric, a crucible for transformation as he gathered confidence. We'll act tonight. The longer we wait, the stronger Sinclair grows. With the sun dipping below the horizon, casting eerie shadows across the skyline, James embraced the thrill of uncertainty. Each step toward action propelled him closer to a reckoning. And perhaps, the impending confrontation with Sinclair would reveal not only the truth about his mother but also the man he was destined to become. Are you ready for this? Evelyn asked, meeting his gaze with a spark of hope. James paused, the question carrying weight far beyond the immediate danger they faced. I'm ready to find out what I'm capable of. The time has come to confront my past and take control of my future. As they set the plan into motion, James felt an exhilarating mix of dread and anticipation swirling within him. The shadows were closing in, but he was ready to step into the light or die trying. Could he leverage the truth against Sinclair's darkness, or would the confrontation unveil more than he bargained for? As the hour approached, James steeled himself against the tides of fate crashing closer by the second, awaiting the undeniable challenge that lay ahead. James adjusted his posture, setting his resolve against the intrusive clamor of self-doubt that threatened to overwhelm him. The calculated risks they were about to take were pressing down on him, reminding him of past failures. But more than that, the stakes were higher now, his mother's life depended on this moment. He glanced at Evelyn, who was preparing to leave. She was full of determination, yet beneath her facade burned the same flicker of anxiety that gnawed at him. How do we know we can trust these contacts? He asked, momentarily wavering. What if they're in Sinclair's pocket? Evelyn paused, her hand resting on the doorknob, then turned to face him. We can't afford to be paralyzed by fear. We have no choice but to take risks. Do you trust me? Her question breached his doubt, sliding through the tightly wound cords of his anxiety. I do, he confessed softly. The admission felt liberating, albeit reluctant. Then let us meet back here in 3 hours, she said, a fierce edge in her voice that reminded him of why he had allied with her in the first place. She left, the door clicking shut behind her. Alone, James felt the full weight of silence envelop him. He placed his hands on the desk, feeling the splinters beneath his fingers, grounding himself in the tumultuous moment. What were they walking into? He began to sort through the jumbled mess of papers strewn across his desk, knowing he needed clarity before diving deeper into the darkness that awaited him. He rummaged through old files. Tucked behind invoices and legal documents, he stumbled upon a faded envelope marked with his mother's handwriting. His heart raced, perhaps it contained something relevant. As he opened it, he discovered a letter, a testament to her resilience. Instinctively, he read her words. They spoke of enduring struggles, of bravely facing adversities far more dangerous than he had realized. She expressed fears not of the threats around her, but of failing her loved ones, of letting them down. A fire ignited in his chest. In that moment, he didn't just see his mother as an innocent victim, he saw her as a warrior. The realization struck him, her strength had been instilled in him, whether he had acknowledged it or not. James folded the letter and set it aside with newfound purpose. He knew transforming that strength into action required ingenuity and strategy. He pulled out the business records he had been neglecting, hoping to uncover patterns. Each figure whispered secrets of illicit transactions, links to Sinclair's enterprise. But what could be extracted and utilized against him? The puzzle pieces swirled ominously in his mind, a chaotic web ripe for deconstruction. He picked up his phone and began to conduct research, weaving together a timeline of Sinclair's operations and connections. As he pieced together the fragments of evidence, a lingering thought surfaced: what if he unintentionally stepped into a trap? What if Sinclair was waiting, anticipating his every move? He shook off the unease and focused instead on the emerging connections. With each discovery, he felt himself pivot from a position of dread to one of calculated empowerment. Hours passed, and James worked feverishly, adrenaline fueling his focus. The tension of the countdown buzzed in his ears, each minute brought him closer to a confrontation that could either liberate or shatter his world. The sudden buzz of his phone jolted him. It was a message from Evelyn: "I have a lead. Meet me at the cafe on 4th at 8. We need to prepare." As he read the text, adrenaline surged through his veins once more. He realized he was no longer just a victim desperate to rescue his mother, he was becoming a strategist, someone capable of walking into the depths of danger with purpose. With renewed clarity, he gathered his notes and files and prepared to leave. Yet, a lingering question caught in his throat: what if leveraging this information opened doors that had been shut for a reason? Was he risking everything for a chance at justice, or was he merely walking into Sinclair's trap? As James stepped out into the night, the weight of the looming confrontation pressed against him like a storm about to break. The darkness felt imminent, and he braced himself, knowing that every choice he made could reshape the narrative of his life. Could he turn his revelations into a weapon against Sinclair? Or was he dangerously overestimating his resolve, blind to the true dangers lurking just out of sight? The cafe buzzed with the slow hum of evening chatter, a stark contrast to the urgency that clawed at James's consciousness. He spotted Evelyn seated in a corner, her brow furrowed in concentration as she scrolled through her phone. The moment their eyes met, a wave of shared purpose surged between them, lifting the veil of uncertainty that had threatened to swallow him whole. Taking a seat across from her, he felt the weight of his findings settle upon the table. His notes were scarcely organized, scribbles of hypotheses and pieces of evidence swirling like a storm in his mind. "You texted something about a lead?" he managed, his voice a murmur above the background noise. Evelyn looked up, her expression shifting from focus to determination. "I spoke to someone who knows Sinclair's inner circle. They mentioned a crucial meeting next week, something that could tip the balance. But we need to act quickly. He won't stay vulnerable for long." Her words hung in the air, laden with the urgency of their situation. The idea that just days away could change everything filled him with both dread and exhilaration. Sinclair was a titan, and attacking him head-on felt like climbing a mountain, the summit shrouded in clouds that could obscure his view. What if it's a diversion? The doubt slipped through James's lips unwillingly. I can't shake the feeling that it's a trap. What if we're walking into a bigger danger? Evelyn's gaze held steady. Every risk has a cost, James. But doing nothing is also a risk. Your mother deserves to be saved. Her words thrummed with conviction, igniting a resolve within him that had flickered only hours before. He leaned back in his chair, reflecting on her statement. His thoughts swirled, grappling with an uncomfortable truth. He had the ability to change the course of their lives, but would it lead to salvation or chaos? He had known loss and despair, reveled in victories only to watch them crumble. Yet here, now, he felt the weight of choice pressing heavily upon him. James picked up his notebook, flipping through hastily scribbled pages filled with disjointed thoughts and fragmented plans. He needed something coherent, something actionable. Okay, he said, a firmer tone emerging. We begin tonight. We gather everything we can on Sinclair's meeting. Who will be there, what will be discussed? We can't just react, we need an advantage. A flicker of admiration danced across Evelyn's features. I knew you had it in you. But we can't do this alone. James took a deep breath, the realization hitting him like a jolt. The trust that he had placed in Evelyn was more than just a leap of faith, it forged a partnership. They were two warriors, armed with information and the will to fight. He had to reach out to others who shared their goal, others who had perhaps suffered at Sinclair's hands. Let us enlist more help. We need people with skills. Contacts in tech, or even legal expertise. We can't navigate this labyrinth alone. Each word firmed his resolve, constructing a framework of intent around him. Evelyn nodded, her eyes gleaming with approval. I can reach out to someone in cybersecurity. They might help us breach Sinclair's defenses, sift through data we might not be able to access. As they strategized, James's conviction deepened. Every detail they discussed fortified his determination to leverage not just their skills but also the painful truths they harbored about Sinclair. This was not just a fight for his mother, it was a chance to strip the layers off a man who had built his empire on the suffering of others. James scrawled a list of contacts and potential resources, the ink solidifying his intentions on paper. He felt the shadows of his doubts receding, replaced by the desire to dismantle Sinclair's fortress of power. But as they prepared to leave the cafe, a chill pricked the air, the knowledge that every move they made was a thread in a delicate tapestry of risk. The stakes had mushroomed, and the decision to escalate their efforts weighed heavily. He turned to Evelyn, the question escaping before he could rationalize it. What happens if we expose him? Will he retaliate, and who else will he target? For the first time, doubt creased her brow. If we do this right, he won't see us coming. But if we miss our mark? James met her gaze, resolute yet pensive. It was no longer just a matter of injustice, it was about control and chaos and the lives that hung in the balance. The time was fast approaching to face Sinclair's wrath directly. Yet just before they stepped through the cafe doors, an instinct flared. Wait, I still need to check something, he said abruptly, pulling out his phone. Among the urgent texts and notifications, one message stood out, a name that evoked memories, a possibility he hadn't considered. Thomas, a former employee of Sinclair's, may hold vital information about his operations. Who is Thomas? Evelyn inquired, her curiosity piqued. The key to Sinclair's past, and possibly our way inside. Emerging urgency flooded within him, overshadowing his earlier anxieties. This was a chance to not just challenge Sinclair but to uncover the very foundations of his empire. As they prepared to reach out to Thomas, the weight of the world pressed heavily once more. The paths ahead splintered into countless directions, and James couldn't shake the creeping notion that what came next could either be his salvation or absolute ruin. Would Thomas hold the truth that could take Sinclair down? Or would he lead them deeper into danger than they could imagine? James felt a mix of determination and trepidation wash over him as he began to type Thomas's number into his phone. The memories of their time together at the company flooded back, each one a reminder of the power structure they operated under, a structure that had ultimately crushed them both in different ways. He hesitated, briefly losing himself in thought about what reaching out could mean. Was this friendship with Thomas still intact, or had the years changed everything? "We should meet somewhere neutral," he said, glancing at Evelyn. "Some place where he won't feel threatened. He always was more comfortable away from Sinclair's shadow." Evelyn agreed, her eyes focused on a map app, searching for a suitable cafe that offered privacy but wasn't too far from where they stood. While she worked on logistics, James considered the current landscape of his life an evolving battle where each decision carried immense weight. He ran a hand through his hair, feeling the tension gather just beneath the surface. Trust was a luxury he could no longer afford, especially with someone whose loyalty had been tested by Sinclair before. The fiber of their connection had worn thin, frayed by time and betrayal. What if Thomas didn't want to help? What if he was scared of retribution? "Got it," Evelyn said, breaking his reverie. "There's a little hole-in-the-wall cafe where we can talk. It's a bit out of the way, but that's good, less chance of being overheard." "Great. Let us go," he replied, urgency threading through his voice. As they stepped outside, the coolness of the evening wrapped itself around him like a cloak, sharpening his senses. James felt exposed yet emboldened, a paradox that sent a jolt of adrenaline coursing through him. They walked quickly along the dimly lit streets, every footfall a reminder of the ticking clock hanging over their heads. Sinclair's meeting loomed large like a storm cloud, ready to unleash chaos at any moment. "Have you thought about what you'll say to Thomas?" Evelyn asked, her gaze flicking to his face. "He loved that job, and I know," James interjected. "But he needs to understand that the stakes have never been higher. It's not just about him anymore, it's about everyone Sinclair has hurt. That's what this is really about, right?" Evelyn smiled faintly, yet James could see the flicker of doubt behind her eyes, the same doubt that had plagued him. He doubted whether his increasingly ambitious goals came off as strategic decisions or reckless gambles. Would he be able to convince Thomas to side with them? The cafe was cozy, its warmth contrasting the chill that had established itself in James's chest. As they entered, the aroma of fresh coffee enveloped them, a momentary comfort before they plunged into deeper confrontations. James spotted a corner booth, secluded enough to discuss their plans without alerting eavesdroppers. "Wait here," Evelyn instructed, slipping away to secure their seats. Alone, James took a deep breath, reminding himself that empowerment came from facing fears, not avoiding them. The great challenge ahead of him was crystallizing. This was not merely about unearthing secrets, it was about unearthing truths about himself. With her return, they settled into their seats, and that's when James's phone buzzed, jolting him back to reality. A text from Thomas appeared, a simple address followed by a question mark. It was time. "Soon," he said, determination sharpening his words. But as James contemplated how to initiate that conversation, an unfamiliar knot of fear gripped him. What part of him was ready to confront the past? "Hey, you look tense," Evelyn remarked. "Are you sure about this?" "Trusting Thomas is a leap," he said, voice strained. "I know him well, but the guy I knew was torn apart by Sinclair. Will he risk standing up against him again? Do you want me to speak first? Get the vibe?" Evelyn suggested. "No," James declared, shaking his head. "I need to take this step myself. I have to face whatever shadow Sinclair has cast over both of us." Each moment felt pregnant with significance, threatening to tip over into chaos with a single misstep. He could already feel the implications of trying to expose the billionaire weighing heavily on his shoulders. The truth wasn't just a tool, it was a weapon that could potentially destroy them all. Before he formulated a response to Thomas, James questioned whether he was actually ready for the responses he might provoke. Would the reunion bring hope or a deeper abyss? The door swung open, and in walked a familiar figure. Thomas, his face showing the hard lines of struggle, appeared cautiously. Their eyes locked across the room, and a wave of recollection surged over James suddenly. The stakes were all too real. There was Thomas, heart worn like a badge of honor, harboring truths about Sinclair that could either liberate them or pull them deeper into darkness. "Here we go," James whispered, as anticipation gripped him. What he had to ask could unravel everything. Would the answers propel them forward, or push them into the abyss? Thomas approached cautiously, uncertainty masking his expression as he scanned the cozy cafe for intruding eyes. The minutes felt like hours as James's mind raced with potential outcomes, preparing for the confrontation that could very well alter the course of his life and his mother's legacy. "James," Thomas greeted, his voice low as he slid into the booth across from him. There was a heavy weight of history between them, both men set adrift amid the tumult of betrayals and choices that had led them to this moment. "Thank you for coming," James said, the urgency of his purpose sharpening his tone. "I need to talk about Sinclair, what you know about him and my mother." Thomas shifted uncomfortably, the tension palpable. The hesitation was almost tangible. "I can't," he began, but James wasn't about to let him fold back into silence. "Your silence protects him, Thomas. It shields the man whose empire is built on the ruin of others, the sacrifices made by families like mine." The fervor in James's voice echoed off the cafe's walls, imbuing the moment with a growing intensity. "I know what you're trying to do, but this is dangerous," Thomas warned, his voice lowering. "Sinclair is not simply going to let you walk away after this. He has resources at his disposal, people. People he's used as collateral for success," James pressed, determination fueling the urgency within him. "My mother didn't just fight for her own freedom, she fought for others, and we're not going to let her fight be in vain." A flicker of recognition flashed across Thomas's face, a momentary crack in his stoic facade. "She was brave, no doubt. But I didn't stand up then, I was scared. The company controlled too much of my life. I feared losing everything. That fear is what keeps Sinclair in power." James leaned in, the truth of his mother's experiences rallying his conviction. "You know the deals he makes, the contracts he pushes through, and the lives he manipulates. But now, you have a chance to make it right. We need your knowledge." Thomas hesitated, his jaw tightening as he wrestled with the past. "You really think exposing him could change anything?" "I don't just think it could change things, I know it can. We owe it to my mother to unveil the reality Sinclair has buried beneath his empire. He's built his wealth on the backs of the suffering and oppressed, and it's time someone holds him accountable. You have the insight to help us do that." Thomas took a deep breath, the weight of remorse etched across his face. James could see the internal battle raging, loyalty to the past versus the chance for redemption. There was a meeting last month. Sinclair brokered a deal that could ruin lives if it goes through. He's moving into new territories, using threats as leverage. James leaned forward, adrenaline surging through him. "What kind of threat?" "Fires. Vandalism. He'll do anything to extinguish any form of resistance." He made it clear that anyone who spoke out would pay a severe price. Thomas relented, his voice shaking as he unfolded the tale of desperation. "Then we need to gather evidence, and fast," James commanded, driven by a newfound confidence. "We must mobilize. I have resources, Evelyn is with me, and I can reach out to the media to create a ripple. If we expose him on a larger scale, we gain leverage. Are you ready to take that step?" Thomas questioned, eyes narrowing as he scanned James for weakness. This could unravel everything. James's heart hammered. "This is bigger than both of us. It's the legacy our parents left, a fight against systems that oppress rather than empower. I can't turn back now." The resolve in his voice ignited something in Thomas. "You're right. I've been silent for too long. As Thomas laid out the information he had collected, James found his mind racing, stitching together plans for collaboration that would leverage their strengths. They would need every piece of evidence to build a case against Sinclair, bring to light how deeply ingrained his influence was, revealing not just the corruption but the inner workings that held the system together. An hour sped by as they strategized, the cafe's hustle fading into the background. It was a revelation etched in shared discovery. James was no longer just a retaliatory son seeking answers, he was now a tactician, focused on dismantling the oppressive systems that had marred their lives. "Let us meet tomorrow," Thomas said, a crack of determination in his voice, now one that hadn't been there before. "Come prepared with anything you find. You need knowledge on your side to outsmart him." James nodded slowly, understanding the implications of what lay ahead. "I will. Thank you." As they stood to leave, James felt the weight of possibility settle over him like a shroud. They had ventured into the depths of chaos, and now they were armed with the truth, or at least the beginnings of it. With every step back to his car, a mix of apprehension and exhilaration danced in his stomach. The reflection was stark: he had transformed from a man overshadowed by the trauma of his mother's struggles to an agent of change, ready to challenge the institutions that oppressed. He stepped into the driver's seat, heart pounding with anticipation, the narrative shifting and blossoming before him like spring from the cold grip of winter's retreat. This was the moment his mother would have wanted for him, one of reclamation, courage, and empowerment. As he navigated the darkened streets toward the evening, he knew that embracing the truth would lead to turbulence. But in that inherent chaos lay the bedrock of his strength, a story reborn, ready to be heard, and finally, a legacy looking back at him with unyielding clarity. The thrill of confronting Sinclair was close now, but he understood the gravity of the fight they were embarking on. The confrontation wouldn't just reshape their lives but would echo through the lives of countless others. As dawn approached on the horizon, James steeled himself, a transformation born from resilience, a commitment to truth pressing forward, ready to shatter the silence. And so, their fight for justice began anew. Subscribe immediately to the channel to not miss the next exclusive emotional stories. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm. Your support matters. Comment your reactions and theories about the ending, we want to hear from you. Share instantly this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion. You need to subscribe now, this is the moment to show your support. Don't wait even one more second to share.